In this video, you will learn to discuss global cyber trends and challenges. Cyber threats vary greatly, and so do the methods of attack. To counter those various sources, organizations need intelligence to fortify themselves from both internal and external threats. To prevent future attacks, organizations can identify and investigate attackers after an incident. All insights become part of the organization's cybersecurity strategy and tactics, resulting in an intelligent approach to cybersecurity. The next three videos are a replay of a webinar that Sydney Pearl, a cybersecurity expert at IBM, presented to a global audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time today. Pleasure speaking with each of you. Quick introduction over myself. I'm the global IBM I2 cyber leader. My background is prior United States Navy, 12 active, 8 reserves in special operations, intelligence, and communications. I've worked with a number of organizations. In addition to my military career, I've also worked at Unisys Corporation as an executive architect, working within the 8 global security operations centers at Unisys. Also served as the executive principal for cyber intelligence and analytics at Unisys. That was my last role prior to leaving and joining IBM. And I joined IBM to lead the cyber threat hunting initiative for IBM's I2 technology. Additional capabilities and backgrounds that I have is I also serve as the executive director of the Counter-Trafficking Information Sharing Analysis Organization out of Kennedy Space Center at NASA facilities down in Florida, and also serve as the volunteer chief cyber intelligence officer as well. So I've been in and around not only traditional protect and defend cybersecurity aspects, I also bring a combination of both intelligence experience from my military years all the way through to working with law enforcement, and also now into working in the cybersecurity industry as well for a number of years, over 12 plus years in doing that. So as part of that, I want to talk to you today about what are some of the global cyber trends and challenges that we're seeing. The good news is that I've now talked to a number of organizations around the world. I've been in 18 countries, and I've delivered now cyber threat hunting workshops to a number of clients across each of those different countries. And I can certainly share with you that from global systems integrators to managed security services providers to multi-industry opportunities and situations, clients and partners and service providers are recognizing that cyber threat hunting, proactive cyber threat hunting, needs to be integrated into SOC operations today. So as part of that, I just want to say that we can all conclude that cybercrime has transformed the role of citizens, business, government, law enforcement, etc. Cyber touches everything that we do. It's not something we can turn a blind eye to. As an example of that, let's just take the healthcare industry as an example. Let's say that, for example, that you have a defibrillator because you have a heart problem. All of these devices are what we are defining as Internet of Things, and all these devices are now moving into the space of all being wireless and Wi-Fi and IP enabled. So over the next 5 years, you're going to see a definitive trend as the Internet of Things continues to take hold and to drive and define who we are as a culture globally. And as more of these technologies take hold, naturally that introduces a number of different cybersecurity challenges as part of that. But the reality is that cyber touches everything today. And we can call it cyber, we can call it internet, we can call it whatever form of electronic forms of communication that we want to define it as. But the bottom line is we're all connected. And with those types of connections, that leads to a number of challenges. So as part of those challenges, a number of breaches, of course, are caused by malicious and criminal actions and activities. A number of organizations are facing numerous challenges from cyber skill shortages, certainly not even talking about cyber threat hunting, I'm just talking cybersecurity specifically, and the challenges that we're facing in the cyber skills space to be able to fill those types of responsibilities and skills as we look to deploy and support these types of solutions. Now, what other key point here that's very important is what we call the dwell time. The dwell time by which a vulnerability or a threat has been within your network or others' networks that has been there without it being identified or recognized. And that average dwell time is approximately 191 days. Now, that varies from organization to organization. The bottom line is that all organizations and industries today are facing a number of challenges as it relates to how to identify the threat before it actually becomes a problem and identify the sophistication of this. Now, as part of that, the advancement of these threats continue to grow. So, as we all know, threat actors, whether that's transnational criminal organizations, the criminal underground, whatever form that may come in, whether it's nation states against nation states, the reality is that they are highly resourced, and that means they have more time, more money, and more resources than we ever will. They're also highly sophisticated in what they do. And what I mean by that is that they are actually running a business. And you can see here the types of attacks that have occurred in the United States. And of course, this is not necessarily limited to the United States, but these are good examples of the length of time that a threat was in their organization before it was actually found and the amount of damage that was actually done. So when we talk about sophistication, these transnational criminals and criminal underground activities and nation states have access to more time, more money, and resources. And that means, for example, they can run businesses like ransomware as a service, like malware as a service. And as part of that, certainly these are all challenges. But as part of this, we can certainly see that the dwelling in the network is a challenge. How do you identify those threats before they become an actual problem? And these are other examples as to some of the challenges that we're facing. Now, as I speak to a number of chief information security officers around the world across multiple industries, military, government, law enforcement, financial services, insurance, healthcare, to me, I've been around this a very long time, and data is data, and criminal activity is criminal activity. So, for example, some of the work that I've done in the past, I've helped gather information around international fugitives, criminal fugitives that have that are fugitives from justice, that have moved and relocated and geolocated to different locations around the world. And some of the information and intelligence I've gathered and helped provide has, of course, to help geolocate and get eyes on location of where these people are located so they can get captured and then extradited back to the countries from where they originate. So to me, data is data. And whether you're talking about cyber criminals or you're talking about terrorist organizations or whether you're talking about financial crimes, to me, data is data. And how do you identify that data? Now, CISOs are saying that from the realm of targeted acts of war and terrorism to indirect criminal activities to targeted data theft, espionage, hacktivist groups, the reality is that the threat vectors are multidimensional as well, and they're coming from various environments and activities, and from zero-day threats to ransomware to malware, all these types of threats are causing challenges for ourselves as well as for our clients. And naturally, the SOC has to understand, and the Managed Security Services Organization has to be able to understand that if you continue to play the game of protect and defend, which is extremely important, no doubt about it, it is very important. Protect and defend is critical. However, we also need to evolve to the next level of getting into more proactive cyber threat hunting. So as part of that, as we look at some SOC challenges as to what we're finding, as we speak to a number of directors of SOC operations, global systems integrators, managed security service providers, we're finding that one of the current trends and needs in the marketplace is to increase the speed and accuracy of the response. Now, how do you do that? When you don't have insight to the hidden and unknown and emerging threats, how do you know how to increase the speed and accuracy of the response? Now, the reality is that in the traditional SOC today, the Tier 1, Tier 2 systems, the endpoint systems, the firewalls, the Tier 2 systems being the SIEM, those systems are certainly doing their job, but they're only going to find 80% of the known threats. The challenge is that the 20% of the unknown threats is causing 80% of the greatest damage. And so as you look at the pyramid of how it is inverted from the actual threats of being 80% known to the 20% being unknown and the 20% being the greatest amount that's doing the greatest amount of damage, you can see here where you have to now start evolving your SOC to the next gen capability. And that means we now need to start ingesting, incorporating intelligence-led analysis in what we call the intelligence-led cognitive SOC.
In this video, Sydney will describe cyber challenges faced by security operations centers, or SOCs, today.
All the intelligence-led cognitive SOC. Now, it's a lot of words, I realize, for how do you define SOC and how do you define next-gen. Let's just simplify it and say next-gen SOC led by intelligence, driven by proactive cyber threat hunting, is ultimately where we need to be able to get to. So, as I said earlier in my introduction, I have worked within the SOC environment now for a number of years. I spent 10 years at Unisys Corporation interfacing with, working with the security operations centers at Unisys and with the clients there as well. And as my role as executive architect, very similarly here, my role was to first and foremost understand what were the client's requirements. Of course, that's a requirement we all have, whether that's internal or external, depending on we're supporting clients or whether it's something we have to support internally ourselves. We have to understand what we're trying to achieve with our current state of protect and defend operations and traditional SOC operations. However, what we're finding is that a number of our clients, a number of GSIs, a number of MSSPs are recognizing that we have got to find a way to start getting ahead of these threats before they become an actual problem. And so what we want to introduce here today is how do we actually start to do this? Now, I'm going to go back to my experience in the human intelligence space and the intelligence world. And here's one of the challenges that we're facing. And that is, in the SOC, security operations professionals, level 1 through 4 analysts and engineers are very good at what they do in the context of the scripted environment that they need to work within. And there's absolutely no argument that the level 3, level 4 investigators, or actually analysts, are conducting cyber forensic investigation. But let's be very clear, that is not actual proactive cyber threat hunting. That is reactive cyber forensic investigation. And we're going to talk about what actual proactive cyber threat hunting is. But what I want to share with you here is that in all things that we do in the world of intelligence, in the world of threat and threat vectors, the common denominator across each of these domains, whether that's cyber, whether it's physical threat, whether it's terrorism, whether it's nation states, the bottom line is that this is all human driven. This is all human oriented, all human originated. And therefore, when you start looking at how to identify proactively the threat vectors, understanding the transnational criminals, understanding how they're operating, now how do I start to now formulate a strategy around how to do proactive cyber threat hunting? So the first place to start is how do you define what actual cyber threat hunting is? And the way IBM defines it in the context of the use of I2 is the ability to proactively and aggressively identify, intercept, track, investigate, and eliminate your adversary before they can become a problem to your organization or before they become a problem for your clients. This is the general direction. This is the next-gen SOC that we're talking about, the intelligence-led cognitive SOC that we're talking about. Now, of course, that needs to be linked to the cyber kill chain, which then, of course, helps you understand the tactics, techniques, and procedures, the TTPs as we define it in the intelligence world. Of course, this is terminology used heavily by intelligence as well as law enforcement. So as part of this, it's understanding what is cyber threat hunting. And I want to, again, clarify, cyber forensic investigation is something that is done today by level 3, level 4 analysts within the SOC, traditionally speaking, but that is reactive, and it is a forensic investigation that you're actually doing. Now, now you could argue that say that, well, if a threat has been conducted and a vulnerability has been executed, and we now need to conduct an investigation. Are you hunting for that threat? Yes, of course you are, but you're doing it within the context of a cyber forensic investigation. And what we're saying is that cyber threat hunting is the proactive ability and aggressively identify, intercept, and track and investigate and eliminate these types of threats before they become a problem, which then goes back to what we said earlier. How do you identify with the 80% known that's there in your traditional protect and defend, traditional SOC environment today? How do you evolve to the next level of the next gen SOC of proactive cyber threat hunting? And as you look at the skill set within the SOC, when you look at the skill set between the SOC, you're looking at skill set between a security analyst level 1 through 4, and then what's really needed to conduct this type of work and how you structure a cyber threat hunting team is actually an intelligence skilled person. And there's a gap there in the skill sets today. Now, GSIs, MSSPs can structure teams to do this type of work, but this is, by and large, a different skill set, a different team, a cyber threat hunting team that consists of CTI, cyber threat intelligence, cyber threat hunting, red team, etc., but with the goal and the objective to drive toward actionable intelligence, which is the intent of proactive for cyber threat hunting by design. Now, where do you start? If you don't have any place to begin and you don't really know where to begin on how to do proactive threat hunting, you can start with a global threat landscape view. Bring it down to regional, which of course would include India and other locations. Industry, really tailoring the threat intelligence that we're identifying, threat vectors, threat actors, et cetera, and then specific to the actual organization itself. And as GSIs and MSSPs and as IBM security sellers, naturally, as we work with our clients and we work across these different industries, it's understanding what are the variables associated with this, and then, of course, bringing that down even to further levels, and that is, how do you know yourself? How does the world see you? How do you know your enemy? How do you know your employees, your vendor, your customer? These are all variables that organizations, and if you're providing services to these organizations, if you want to help them and help them move beyond the protect and defend space, these are all factors you have to start incorporating in your environment. Now, with know your enemy, and of course know any aspects, but in particular knowing your enemy, you have to understand the cyber kill chain. And the first place to start with that, of course, is related to reconnaissance. And what do I mean by that? Related to reconnaissance means that these threat actors, whether that's transnational criminals or nation states, are conducting reconnaissance on organizations on where they want to place their focus of targets. You can be a target of choice or a target of opportunity. But nonetheless, they are conducting their reconnaissance and they're gathering their information about organizations, whether those are your clients, about your organization, about the industry, but understanding that when they define reconnaissance, they're talking about executives, they're talking about hours of operation, where do you do business, what is the easiest way in. And before we get into all the technical aspects of how to weaponize, deliver, exploit, install, take command and control, and then ultimately execute their actions and objectives, first place is reconnaissance. And they can have, as I said earlier, they have lots of time, lots of money, and lots of resources to do this, and they've got all the time in the world. An example of that is a bank in Chile that was targeted by Swift heist that cost $10 million. Now, there was also another attack on that same bank where they lost $475 million, and they went low and slow in the environment because they were able to conduct a reconnaissance on where is the weak point in where they can deploy their malware to be able to execute these low-end transactions that never get recognized by rule-based systems. So understanding the cyber kill chain is extremely important in this process. Now, as you look at this visual of this graphic, please understand that the key driver here is the human element. It is the people. The art and science of threat hunting, all these factors around internal and external data, statistical analysis, and intelligence has got to be driven and managed by the analyst. That is an intelligence analyst with strong security background that understands the intelligence process and links it to all of these variables. Because, and why is this important? If you don't understand who they are, what they're doing, how they're operating, where they're originating from, if you don't know how to ask those types of questions as it relates to conducting cyber threat hunting, then how will you be able to define where the data sources need to come from, both internal, external data sources from deep web, dark web, open source, social media, internal being your SIEM, endpoint, logs, etc. How do you bring all this data together? And if you don't have the skill set to understand the big picture around the threat vectors, the threat actors, who they are, what they're doing, and how they're operating, then it's challenging for you to be able to ask the right questions without good intelligence. So you need a place to begin, and that starting place is your skill set. In this particular slide, I just want to be clear that what we want to be able to show to you here is that this is not a linear process. And so I hear often from organizations, you know, Sid, before I go to this Tier 3 advanced cyber threat hunting, I really want to be able to mature my SOC. Well, I'm going to be very clear to everyone here on this call. That is a reality and a level of maturity you can't afford to wait to mature. If you're waiting to mature your SOC to get your Tier 1, Tier 2 systems in the state of perfection, then and continue to work in the indicators of compromised reactive space, which we're going to continue to do. If you wait to get started on conducting proactive cyber threat hunting, please understand that it is a risk you are taking on, because the threat actors, the threat vectors, this is continually evolving for them, and they're already light years ahead of us in a lot of situations. And so how do you start to level the playing field? And the truth is that you really need to now start aggressively moving into this cyber threat hunting methodology space. Now, be very clear, indicators of compromise are reactive. We're all familiar with IOCs. IOCs are reactive, indicators of compromise. What we're introducing here is a different type of IOC, which is called an indicator of concern, which is proactive. I'm seeing various forms of intelligence that leads me to believe that there could be an attack on my organization, and here are the types of actions as a threat hunter I'm recommending to my organization or to my clients of the actions and the steps that need to be taken. So this is how you start to mature your organization.
In this video, you will learn to apply cyber threat hunting concepts to an industry solution.
And then, of course, this helps put it into full context as to what a cyber threat hunting team would look like. You can see here when we sit in the center of the cyber intelligence organization, or the cyber threat hunting team center, you have, of course, to your right, you have your traditional SOC operation with your SIEM, your endpoint, all the normal endpoint protection type environments, security device management, etc. You have to your left data sources coming in from open source, deep web, dark web, unstructured data, OSINT, etc. And you need a team that sits outside of the SOC that is responsible for doing proactive cyber threat hunting, ingesting sources from each of these, and ingesting the data from each of these environments, and then ultimately bringing it together in a centralized fashion to make better informed decisions proactively before they become a problem, which then, of course, leads to a more productive, a more efficient, and a more mature SOC environment, because now the red team and the cyber threat hunting team is sharing that information with the blue team, which of course is the SOC. And so it's a continuum, it's a process, it is designed to help you evolve and mature, but understand that if you have good, solid intelligence to work with, and data tools and the technologies that you can use to help ingest and make sense of that, then you then can start making better decisions about what you're seeing. So how do you build a cyber threat hunting team? And you can go back and review this at your leisure. You can go back to this webinar and listen to this again. But in summary, and at a very high level, as I said earlier, the cyber threat hunting team sits outside of and is independent of your traditional SOC. And that is, your SOC operation has its role and responsibility of providing 24/7 operations. That continues. However, introducing an advanced team of cyber threat hunters that may have a combination of both security and intelligence backgrounds can then start to create and build the foundation of a cyber threat hunting team that consists of cyber threat intelligence, a cyber red team that is designed to simulate attacks on the organization. And then, of course, that cyber threat hunting team is proactively identifying threats, sharing that information to the blue team within the SOC, which they can then use to build better rules in their SIEM platforms, better security device management, better protection, better defenses, etc. So please understand the cyber threat hunting team, generally speaking, needs to be outside of the SOC and independent of the SOC, but is the next gen of the SOC that then leads to better defenses for the organization. So the cyber threat hunting use cases or various use cases of how this can be applied. Please understand that today when we talk about I2, EIA, Enterprise Insight Analysis, that I2 has been doing this for a number of years, but from cyber threat hunting to watch list, insider threat, we touch a number of organizations, and of course, we have a number of different use cases that we can talk about as well. These are all the details that we can drill down into specifically with you. But from spear phishing to APTs to insider threat, please understand that I2, EIA, Enterprise Insight Analysis can map across the organization because it is data independent, and we can really start to help formulate what we call risk intelligence, risk insight to what's really going on from internal to external and starting to connect the dots on those different variables and vectors. So here are a couple of use cases as an example within the SOC of how this type of analysis for cyber forensic investigation reduced the number of events coming out of the SIEM because the SOC team, the analysts, were able to more quickly and efficiently gain insight to what's happening, and through that analysis was able to reduce the number of false alarms, or shall I say false positives that they're seeing within their SIEM. And here's another example of a fraud situation where we were able to decrease the amount of fraud that was occurring. So these are just the different examples, but ultimately as we kind of look to bring this into how do you now start to function and start to create your cyber threat hunting team, and what technologies do you need to be able to do that? Well, I2 Enterprise Insight Analysis is designed to help you do just that. I2 has been around now for a number of years. We are deployed in 100+ countries. We work across government, military, law enforcement, private sector companies. We have presence in 18 industries, and of course, as I said, we're touching a number of different countries around the globe. As we go back to what we said earlier, cyber touches everything that we do. There is not an industry that is immune to what I call the cyber pendulum as it swings back and forth as to how you deal with the complexities of cyber, and then how do you identify the insight and the intelligence to identify the threat vectors before they become actual problems. So I2's been doing this type of analysis now for several years. So as we introduce you to I2 Enterprise Insight Analysis, understand that in essence what it is that it gives you the ability for both cyber forensic investigation and proactive cyber threat hunting to evolve your SOC, your GSI, your MSSP, your internal SOC operation to the next level, to the next gen SOC of cognitive analysis. And I2 gives you the ability to sit on top of those internal data sources, those external data sources, bring them into an environment where you can start to make sense of the data, connect the dots, do entity link properties, start to really formulate what's really happening, as you see in the upper right corner, connecting the people, which is the analyst, the driver, the intellect that's overseeing this, ingesting those internal, external data sources, and starting to produce actionable intelligence. And EIA gives you the ability to, of course, turn information to intelligence, gives your cyber threat hunting team, as well as your SOC, the ability to have a centralized environment through I2 EIA, and of course the ability to collaborate and share as part of this. So now, the value proposition is the ability to optimize. It serves as a force multiplier, and it also helps you predict and proactively identify the threats before they become an actual problem. Type of users in the world of cyber, of course, these are examples of those. What's valuable about this is that I2EIA can ingest all these different data sources, internal and external. You can roll this up and submit the intelligence to a CISO, to a CIO, to a head of risk. Please understand that I2 has been used by law enforcement globally to prosecute a number of criminal activities and has stood up in the courts of law, including The Hague in the Netherlands. And so with I2EIA, not only can you use it for traditional security, cyber forensic investigation, proactive cyber threat hunting, and the analyst will lead to criminal intent, criminal investigation, which then you need a technology that can stand up in the court of law as you work with your general counsel, legal, and law enforcement organizations to be able to talk about this.